I just
If
held
you
it
can,
last time.
if you can get rid of it and then not use any words that start with P or S, you'll be great.
Yeah, just do that.
Piss in my pockets.
Jeez. Ugh.
Piss in the pants. That's much better.
Welcome to this very special episode of Rewatchers in the Ring. This podcast episode is scheduled for a runtime of 60 to 90 minutes. This is a six-way jokes count anywhere match. I'm your announcer and guide, Tyler Harris. Entering the ring now is the Globetrotter, the here today, gone tomorrow kid, Mitchell Sky Miles Marshall.
I'm never here, but when I am, watch your ass!
Entering the ring behind him is the anime arbiter, the man who walked 1,000 digital miles across Kojima's post-apocalyptic hellscape so you didn't have to, Tyler, the chiral constructor, McKinley!
Konnichiwa, motherfucker! I'm about to walk all over your face with too many packages on my back. Sayonara.
Now, making their way to the ring, the keeper of the written word, the sci-fi constructor, the professor, Gwen Hammer!
I'm reading here.
Sorry, we'll keep it down. Behind her, to my left, the master of music, the Shaw of sound, Justin the Jazz Hammer!
Listen to me. You better get out of my way, because I'm here to pound, and I don't want to be pounding your asses tonight. All right?
And our very special guest, hailing from Cache County with a cash profession, the accountant, Josh Harris!
Areolas. Don't lose them.
It's a very my accountant said that to me the other day, and I didn't get it, and I still don't. I'll be honest.
Yeah, don't worry.
Better than the Ben Affleck movie.
I mean, low bar. Yeah, we're going to talk about wrestling.
Let's talk about pounding asses instead.
Let's talk about pounding asses. The Jazz Hammer wants to pound some ass.
Smoothly.
So this week we're talking about a movie about that is about wrestling, and then we're just going to talk about actual wrestling, but the good kind, not the high school kind. I posted like months ago. I was getting really into wrestling, and I posted this that I was like, who do I know that has watched a bunch of wrestling? Because I need to talk to someone about it. And like some kid was like, I love wrestling. And so I messaged him, and he's like, oh, do you mean WWE? And I was like, you think I wanted to talk about Greco-Roman wrestling? I don't even know where I'd watch that.
Tyler,
I don't think it's on YouTube even.
Sometimes people see you and they're like, he would watch two young males in singlets roll around on a mat.
I mean, and I will, as long as there's a soap opera melodrama that is encasing all of that. Then, of course.
That's like the hardest question to answer for people. They're like, yeah, I really like wrestling. They're like, oh, like the fake kind? And you're like, whoa.
And they're like, oh, the real kind. So you like the college sport that has like 12 participants.
Way weirder to be way into that, if you ask me.
Still technically an Olympic sport.
But we did. So we watched Fighting with My Family. which is based on a true story of Paige, the diva from WWE. And I'm going to give a quick summary of it, and Josh is going to tell us why we picked that wonderful film. And then we'll just talk wrestling for, like I said, 60 to 90 minutes, all jokes allowed. No holds barred. So Fighting My Family, if you haven't seen it, I'm about to tell you everything that you need to know. Crazy British family loves wrestling. Girl and boy both love wrestling. Get an audition with WWE. The Rock tells them advice. The girl gets it and the guy does not. He's really sad, like in a bad way sad. She goes to Florida. Everyone's way prettier than she is, but she's good at wrestling. But she's gonna quit, and her brother's mad about it because she's throwing away her shot. And she's mad at him because he's throwing away his shot to be a good dad and not an asshole. And so she goes back, and then she makes friends with all the people that didn't like her, and she gets on WWE, and The Rock calls her dad, and her dad's like, fuck, yeah, bullshit, and hangs up on The Rock! Which you don't do, and then she gets the women's title. The end. And then she stars in Midsummer and Little Women in the same fucking year. Holy shit.
Florence Pugh, freaking legend.
What an amazing woman.
You know,
Josh.
sometimes you think about. Oh, sorry.
No,
Go
please,
ahead.
please.
This is dumb commentary, but it's something I think about quite often about last names and how we got them. And
Okay, yeah.
they're usually like people's occupation, you know.
Uh-huh.
So
Like how Josh is Josh the accountant.
Yeah.
yeah.
Josh accountant. Yes.
So like yeah, pew. Either you made church pews, your ancestors did, or people sat on them a lot, and like
Or they stink really bad. They
oh
stink
yeah,
really bad.
pew. That's
Pew.
yeah.
Or they
were a laser gun.
They were
Pew.
Or they were laser gun in olden times. Josh, why? Why did we watch Fighting with My Family this week?
So I picked Fighting with My Family because
Good sell.
what better time to watch a wrestling movie than today? Because, you know, we're in the ramp up towards WrestleMania. We are
I thought this was going to like some sort of social commentary or something.
well, I mean, yeah, we could get into that
With
too.
the coronavirus around, what better way to celebrate human-to-human contact?
I mean, there was a hashtag Me Too moment. I don't know if you guys noticed.
Oh yeah. The main event, Jericho. Is that what you're talking about?
No, I missed that part.
She wasn't there for that.
Oh, you're talking about yeah. I know which one you're talking about now.
Yes.
Okay, let's talk about
okay.
it when we get there.
But yeah, so this Fighting with My Family, I watched that movie, I think, right when it came out. I can't remember when it came out, sometime last year. And that just kind of perfectly coincided with me getting into wrestling. And so really, like, it was my first exposure to wrestling and the first thing that made me be like, oh, they actually can tell a good story. That's cool. And yeah, it's all based on the true story. So, but yeah, I just loved it. I thought it was such a good movie. It was a movie that like I felt like was so much better than it had any right to be. Like when you describe it on paper, like it's kind of a by the numbers movie, but really all of the performances, everything about it just goes above and beyond in my opinion. And it really it's really good.
Yeah. It's like when I remember seeing the cast and being like, this is kind of blowing my mind because it's Nick Frost, Lena Headey, I didn't know who Florence Pugh was at the time. But then also the brother, I can't remember his name, but he's in Dunkirk. He's one of the pilots in Dunkirk. He's great
Also
in
a big
that.
stage actor too.
Oh, is he? Okay, yeah.
He's really well known in that area. You know, in England.
Yeah.
Though.
Right.
And
The West
Norwich.
End, I believe, is where the theater happens. But and then it's direct, and then like knowing it's written and directed by Stephen Merchant, who created The Office, was a delightful Nazi in Jojo Rabbit this year. Yeah, it's so much better than it should be, like you're saying, and I just really loved it. Had everyone now? Gwen, Tyler, Justin, had you guys seen this movie before? I know. Okay.
I watched it like a month ago.
Okay. Yeah. What did you guys think about the movie? I guess.
I mean, I enjoyed it, and I see why you guys enjoyed it. I don't think I liked it as much as you did, but I still enjoyed my time with it. And like Josh said, it's better than it has any right to be. I mean, you watch the trailer and you know exactly what you're getting with this movie. I think something that helped this movie out a lot, actually, is I don't know if it's necessarily the budget or just the partnership with WWE, but that makes it, usually when you see stuff like this, because they don't have the official backing of whatever dream it is that they have to make up like a company.
Yeah.
And that, because of that, they don't have the budget to make things look accurate. And so because like that moment where she's at WrestleMania and she like looks out and there's like the stage and everything,
Right,
you're like,
yeah.
holy shit, like that makes it feel so much more real, and you connect it a little bit more because of, it's one of those rare cases where production value really pushes like the emotional connection to a character.
Yeah.
And I think this movie does a fantastic job with kind of selling that, and you're able to emotionally empathize with I think both I forget their real names, Paige and her brother,
Zach Zodiac.
Zach, yeah. You kind of can sympathize on both ends, because I feel like everyone, especially at the point we're at in our lives, kind of have a dream that they've either achieved or failed at miserably. And you can kind of empathize, whichever has happened to you, you can still empathize with kind of both in the way they present in this film really well, to be like, oh man, this is what that would have felt like if I did achieve it, or if you did achieve it, that you can easily be like, yeah, that would be very nostalgic and bring up those feelings, because you really follow her on that journey and really feel the big moments she feels. They present in a really convincing way. And then the moments with Zach, you're like, yep, I know what that feels like trying to give my all into everything and having it be my dream, and then having other people succeed at it. Like, those are the 2 points of it that work best for me.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, it's great.
I think it is worth noting, like, the WWE, that it is produced by them. There are moments where it feels a little like commercially, like where you're like, this is definitely pushing a product, which is what wrestling is. The product itself like pushes itself. It's like a huge commercial for itself in a way. But I will also say I think this is the best movie WWE's produced. How many Marines do we have? Like 8 or 9?
I'm actually looking at the Wikipedia for WWE Studio Films.
Okay, great.
There's a lot more than I thought. Only 2 Oh, no, sorry. 3 Marines? Yeah, but See No Evil, starring Kane. Jingle All the Way 2 is a WWE Studios production.
Wait, okay, before you get to one, Surf's Up 2, I don't know if you guys remember Surf's Up about penguin surfing.
Yeah.
Surf's Up 2 is
Wave
about
Mania.
them. Yeah, Wave Mania. They are going to Wave Mania.
No.
The Undertaker does a voice in Surf's Up 2. Paige, who Fighting With My Family is about, does a voice in Surf's Up 2.
There are 6 Marines. I am so sorry.
And I'm pretty sure most of those star The Miz,
Yes.
which is a fucking tragedy.
There's
That is-
The Jetsons has a WWE movie, Santa's Little Helper.
Wait,
It's a Randy
They made a
Orton
Jetsons movie?
Yeah, and it's a WWE Central.
Is it animated?
Yeah, WWE
What year did that
Robo
come out?
WrestleMania,
What the fuck?
2017. Sorry.
Was there a part 2 Christmas movie like 2 years ago with, I feel like John Cena turned up at some point?
So John Cena's done some stuff outside of it, so
Oh, okay.
it may be a non WWE. There's a Scooby Doo WWE Curse of the Speed
Right,
Demon.
yeah.
It's insane.
yeah.
There's an episode of Scooby-Doo, I remember just that clip going around of John Cena showing up. Pretty sure he picks up a boulder. And that's all I remember.
Like Cena do.
These are. I'm just looking through this, and they're so bad. You do have The Rock's early movies, Scorpion King, Rundown, and Walking Tall. Were all technically, because he was under contract
Okay.
with them, I think they got. But man, it is otherwise rough. This is. I gotta say.
Otherwise,
You
rough.
guys are doing a shitty job of reviewing this movie right now. Let me, the Globetrotter, correct your candy asses. Okay? Because The Rock is in this film, which means it's automatically a 5.
Wait a minute. Is the Globetrotter the Rock in disguise?
He might
Because he's
be.
never there.
You never know who I am. I could be Jason Statham, who does the opposite of a heel turn in Fast and Furious 7. Anyway, what a great movie. Vince Vaughn, gem.
Seriously.
yeah, no, Vince Vaughn's great.
But I laughed. I cry every time I watch this movie twice. 2 both times, every time.
Was it Vince Vaughn's speech?
It has a happy ending. It's true. Yeah, not the one at the gas station.
Oh, I thought you meant the gas station.
And when she gets the news, I just cry like a baby every time. And then I love the transition when she's screaming in the ring to the baby birthing. Transitions don't get better. Give it I want the Academy Award for editing. I think you guys are putting zero respect on this movie. Second best last year after Parasite. I gotta say. Florence Pugh was in a movie better than Little Women last year, and you're not recognizing it. Stephen Merchant wrote and directed this film knowing nothing about wrestling. I had a little experience with wrestling. I watched it for maybe 2 or 3 years as a kid, and this just resurrected all that can be good. But wrestling is time-consuming. It can be a little ridiculous, but this just warmed my heart. It made me want to go to Norwich, and... Not really. I'm not going to go.
I was going to say, I wouldn't say that those were the parts I really wanted to be.
I wanted to buy weed from that kid. I wanted to go find a blind guy and see what I could make of him. On the swing.
Speaking of blind kid wrestling, I love that part.
He now
in that
participates
movie.
in like regional professional wrestling.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I just, I legitimately think this movie, and it's Stephen Merchant. It's very un-WWE. And while it is sanctioned, you probably don't see some of the more dark things. And Paige also is part of a very notorious sex tape scandal later on in her career. And her career is now ended because of terrible injuries. Yeah. But so there's a dark side. But man, what a great time. What a bunch of great performances. Like, I would happily watch this movie biannually.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I think I love that since it's based on a true story, it's based on true events. Like, at the end, they have kind of the... giving the update on where all these people are at in real life. They talk about the blind kid that he was teaching to wrestle, like how he went on to become a professional wrestler. And I love, my favorite part of the whole movie is they're like, and The Rock went on to a successful career elsewhere. Like,
I was waiting for like a joke like to
seriously?
fade in afterwards, and it didn't.
Yeah,
I hope
was
that's
like,
just the most tongue-in-cheek thing.
I actually kind of love that.
I love it. It gets me every time. I think it's the funniest thing because like on its face, it's just like, oh, also yeah, like The Rock, he was in this movie too, and he's also been successful. Whatever. Like, yeah, he's like one of the most famous men in the entire world. Hosts his own game show now. Whatever.
What's the game show that he hosts?
The Titan Games.
It's like American Ninja Warrior meets World's Strongest Man.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I haven't watched it.
Kind of, yeah.
That's from the
pretty
trailer.
much. That I watched like 3 weeks of it, and I was like, okay, basically every week is really strong, sweaty people doing things that I can't do and making me feel bad about my body. But
I would watch that. Where can I watch that?
It's on Netflix, actually.
Yeah, Netflix.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
Really?
I watched it somewhere on one of the streaming services. I think it's on like ABC, to be honest. Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff.
But yeah, it's a really fun movie. I definitely recommend it. I mean, the real reason that we quote unquote watched this movie this week was so that we could just talk about 4 hours of wrestling that I forced everyone to watch less than an hour ago. So let's talk about it because I just want to get all you guys' impressions. This is, I mean, Mitchell and Justin, you guys have both said you guys kind of watched wrestling during like the WCW. Is that when you were watching too?
Mine was very late WWF, but they had already combined. Before it was WWE, though.
Okay. And then Justin, I remember you specifically watched WCW.
Yeah, we would watch WCW. We weren't allowed to watch WWF because that was like the too violent version of wrestling. But I watched WCW with my dad and my grandpa and my brother for quite a while when I was a little kid, and I loved it. Yeah.
Cool. Now, Gwen and Tyler, had you ever watched more than like 5 minutes of wrestling at a time before tonight?
Except for when Tyler forced you to.
Yeah, except for the other times. I was like, watch this.
Does Glow count?
I'll allow it.
Okay, then yes.
Glow's a great adjacent
For sure.
thing for this.
And also based on a real wrestling promotion from the 80s.
Yeah. I think what's important about wrestling, and I'm sure we'll give a little bit of base history background here, is that it's very popular. It's very regional. It's part of Fighting With My Family is that there's this little England town where this family's trying to do this. That's everywhere. You can find a local wrestling show where a bunch of people and they might not be the most normal people, and I mean that in the best way, which is kind of what Fighting My Family is about. It's like representing the outsider, and a lot of wrestlers take that as their gimmick. It's everywhere, and it's on basic cable in these areas, and especially was in the 80s and 90s. And so, you know, the WWE is the big one. It's the one everyone knows. Like, some people have heard, like, it's big in Japan, probably heard of WCW. I honestly only knew that Goldberg was from WCW. I don't really know anything else about it.
Okay.
And nowadays you've had that one on TNT or whatever. There was one not AEW's on TNT now, but there was another popular one a few years ago. And other than that, like, people don't really know what wrestling is.
Sure.
And so we're watching the AEW, which is a smaller faction, but it's quickly like it's already got to be the second most well-known one after just less than a year of operation.
Yeah,
or a year.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about that. Tyler, I just want to get your like base impressions real quick of like how you're feeling after 4 hours of wrestling, essentially.
Well, I wasn't allowed to watch anything that had the word ass in it in my home growing up, nor another human being.
Somebody say ass.
Hulk Hogan!
Who needs to be pounded?
You guys know how many people had to turn off our podcast already.
Jazz Hammer!
You know, I've heard wrestling is all about the asses that you don't pound.
Something like that. I'm pretty sure Macho Man said that in a Slim Jim commercial once.
But if it was not a superhero, a mutant turtle, or robots punching each other, if there were any punches thrown not in those categories, I wasn't allowed to watch it. So when my
You
parents
got to watch Ninja Turtles?
Oh yeah,
I couldn't even watch that.
You couldn't watch Ninja Turtles?
I couldn't watch Ninja Turtles.
Oh, I couldn't watch the live action Ninja Turtles. My mom was because I mean that ass. The word ass is in that one.
Damn hell. Also in there. Raph got a dirty mouth on that
And
one.
so like whenever my parents were like away, I would like be like, what is South Park? What is this? And very young, I like when I was in like the first grade, I turned on WWE, thinking like because I saw kids wearing WWE shirts, kids who I wasn't friends with. I will admit,
They were from the west side of the highway.
and and I was under the impression like, oh, this is supposed to be real. And then I was like, oh, they're not even hitting each other. And so I was like, this is dumb. It kind of flew under the radar for me for a long time until like I started hearing about it on like other podcasts, which then like a couple years later you started being like, hey, wrestling. And you're like, did you know Billy Corgan from Smashing Pumpkins writes for WWE? I'm like, you have my interest.
And now Billy Corgan owns a wrestling promotion that does a free show on YouTube every week. NWA Power. Check it out. It's pretty good.
So yeah, then I like learned what wrestling was about, like what like the whole draw to it, and yeah. So I've watched since then. I have watched like just clips on YouTube, and I did watch a highlight reel leading up to this of a whole crowd throwing all their folding chairs into a ring onto a man.
Freaking Foley. So yeah, so we did watch. AEW Revolution was the name of this pay-per-view. And like Mitchell was saying, this is a promotion that started last summer, got a lot of money from Billy, I presume a billionaire, Tony Khan, who also is very involved in sports.
His dad
over.
owns the Jaguars and owns a Premier League team, and I can't think of which one.
I was wondering if you would know
Shad
what that
Khan,
was. But...
yeah, very well known. He's
the tiger from Jungle Book.
Yes, Shao Kahn. Yeah.
You know what? I feel bad if I'm pronouncing his first name, but that's what I've heard him called. Like, because he's mentioned a lot. He's a very active and vocal owner, and he's also the Jaguars play in London a lot. The NFL is obviously trying to grow in Europe, but like. I actually had no idea before tonight when you said Tony Khan. I was like, oh, it must be because then you mentioned that he was involved in football.
Yeah.
And then I looked it up a little bit more. But yeah, very, very famous and rich man.
Yeah. And Tony Khan just loves wrestling.
Awesome.
Everyone who is involved in AEW talks about how Tony Khan is like a Rain Man when it comes to wrestling. He will tell you when what day a match took place on, where what venue it was in, and the outcome and moves, and he's just crazy for wrestling. And so it kind of all started with a couple of wrestlers one who is a post WWE, Cody Rhodes, who comes from a very well known wrestling family. And Dusty Rhodes through the 70s and 80s was huge, and a couple of guys who have been who were wrestling in Japan that met Cody when he went over there, kind of after he had left WWE, kind of disillusioned with the idea of professional wrestling because he had such a bad experience in WWE. And basically he went to Japan and was like, this is like my last hurrah in wrestling. I'm just gonna like make a bunch of money and then try to find a new career in life. And instead they decided to start a new wrestling promotion, and now it has a weekly show on TNT. They have their talent comes from kind of all over the world, pretty famous in like Mexico and Japan, and these wrestlers who have come together, who now have this big opportunity to be on TV in America, which is still a very big thing if you're a wrestler. Like, that's still a huge market that you definitely want to break into. But yeah, so we watched the pay-per-view tonight, and this is something that I started seriously watching AEW probably 4 months ago, I would say, around there. And just have been hooked. I've been watching it every week. I've been watching all the dumb YouTube shit they put out that is in between episodes. I am following a bunch of wrestling people on Twitter who just are a nightmare. I will say, find some friends that you know in real life that like wrestling and start getting into it with them, because people's opinions online are just trash. It is a real nightmare out there. But yeah, so this was a pretty big event. A lot of title changes and some really big matches. These pay-per-views are kind of what the weekly show builds up to. They're kind of mid-season finales or finales, if you think of it in terms of TV. But let's just talk about a couple of the matches. Are there any matches that you guys want to talk about to kind of kick it off? Anything that, like...
Can we talk about the orange guy?
let's do it. Yeah, let's talk about the orange guy.
Is my energy. Like, was so restful for a minute.
Yeah, Orange Cassidy, who has... Orange Cassidy is one of the wrestlers in AEW who is an incredibly polarizing force, especially to longtime wrestling fans. Because Orange Cassidy's gimmick is kind of that he doesn't wrestle, but tonight he did fucking wrestle. Like, really, like, incredibly wrestled. But... a lot of people see Orange Cassidy as this representation of losing the real spirit of wrestling, which was a sport where the outcome was always determined. Like, it's a bizarre thing to, like, in my mind, to put up all these barriers as to what that is and what you can do when they've done some ridiculous shit in wrestling. Yeah. But yeah, he is, I think, especially for people who are new to wrestling, and like the first time I saw him, it like blew my mind that could exist in wrestling, because it's so atypical. It's so different from anyone else in wrestling.
I mean, that's what I'm living for, though. Like, that's the shit I want more of. Like, the more, like, I mean, you got to be, with something like this, you have to be very careful, like how hard you lean into a gimmick and how much you rely on a gimmick.
Sure, yeah.
I think that, or at least what I saw tonight, was the right amount of leaning into that gimmick, and is just so fun to watch. And I want more wild, crazy personalities that are very different from each other, and watch those styles clash in the ring in that way. I think is just really fun. And so, yeah, Orange Cassidy match was definitely one of my favorites.
Yeah, he's wildly entertaining and unlike anything else. You can't overdo it, and I get why traditional wrestling fans would be like, "Why are we doing this slapstick comedy?" Clearly, the guy has some talent, but I mean, he's like. He's got this arrogance about him. He does the half thumb, the half thumbs up.
Yeah,
Let's talk about
the laziest thumbs up.
He puts his hands in his pocket. He doesn't react to things. He does these, like, he'll tap someone on the shin, and the crowd's like, oh, like he just, it's so great. And yeah, I immediately started looking for an Orange Cassidy T-shirt on this, because we're gonna go to an AEW event in a couple weeks, and I couldn't spend the money on it, but it's a thought. I like it, and he is the type of person there's an ESPN personality, Katie Nolan, who is really popular. She just kind of started getting into WWE, and then randomly, I didn't know, I listened to her podcast, and she's never mentioned AEW, and randomly tonight she just goes, I met my new king, and it's Orange Cassidy.
Oh,
and I was like, that's what this does, though. That like, if that clip goes viral on TikTok or Instagram or something, like that kind of matters, and he's fun, and clearly he can wrestle, so I don't know how far you can take that or take him, but immediately I was... I'd never seen anything like it, and I was totally into it.
Yeah.
I mean, that one move he does where he's like spins around the person twice and then throws them down is very impressive and physically just like fun to watch too. Like that, which traditional wrestling fans should appreciate.
And then he puts his hands in his pockets.
He looks like he's not working for anything he's doing, which is
Oh my gosh!
astonishing.
The roll from he starts rolling across the ring, exits out one side, gets thrown back and rolls to the other. Gets thrown back in, rolls the other, so he anticipates it, goes around, and as he reaches him, he stops, stares him down, smiles, and rolls back to the center.
It's
amazing.
Like, it's taking a comedy bit to just the right thing, but it's so out of place where it is. I mean, props to AEW for having that. And it's, by the way, this is the penultimate match, so it's not like they threw this in for fun. This was one of the best things that we saw, and it was right before the main event. Yeah. And if we can transition here, I would actually say the main event was the second best match of the night. Maybe. Yeah. Maybe third, but I thought the best match was the tag team, which, as someone, I remember watching a lot of wrestling, and I liked Rey Mysterio and Edge, and they started out as part of significant tag teams, and I kind of was out on tag teams. Sure. I hate how much BS there is and how much you can cheat and time you give and everything, but this tag team was so entertaining.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of the philosophy of AEW, just to kind of compare like the landscapes of professional wrestling right now is WWE, I think for a while, I mean, starting with kind of post-Attitude Era, where you had these big, crazy personalities. You had people like Mankind, who became kind of comedy wrestlers, who transitioned from like extremely hardcore matches to being this comedy figure who tag teamed with The Rock. You started to get into like the John Cena stuff, where it was more PG and family friendly. And now WWE right now has such a self-serious edge to it. All the big wrestlers that they're trying to get over right now are so similar, and they're they're big beefy guys who wear black and have long hair and are either into pirates or Vikings. That's like essentially what it is right now. And I mean that's overgeneralizing, but that is one of the refreshing things I think about AEW. You have a personality like Orange Cassidy. You also have on that roster a character named Luchasaurus who made very brief appearances in this. He's literally a dinosaur. No, he wears a mask. Luke Perry's son is his tag team partner, and he is a dinosaur with an English degree.
Was he sitting with like the rock and roll dudes?
The rock and roll dudes.
They kept cutting to the crowd. There's dudes with long hair.
Yes. So that was the Jurassic Express.
Yeah. So you've got that. You've got guys like Private Party who are like just these two club dudes from New York. Like they've let the wrestlers stay in control of their gimmicks, and because of that, you have this very diverse and wild just group of wrestlers, and they bring them together in really interesting ways. Like that Orange Cassidy match, he faces off against Pac, who is this beast of a man. Would definitely fit in on the roster of WWE right now. Like he is that kind of wrestler. He's just a force, and he's just there to fuck shit up. And they ended up putting them together, and I was like, man, I wonder if Pac hates this. But you would not tell. Like it feels like he was having so much fun, and he still got to do what he's really good at as well. Which
I think beat the crap out of the guy, and he wins. And I think there's going to be a point when Orange Cassidy wins that kind of matchup. People are going to be a little pissed off.
Yeah.
Well, that's really what I think is so great about AEW is like it takes people who have wrestled so much in Mexico, so much in Japan, so much on like independent circuits all across the United States, and it brings them in, and it doesn't force them into a new character. Like, after one of my first episodes of Dynamite that I watched, which is AEW's weekly show, so Orange Cassidy is part of a tag team called the Best Friends.
Great name for a tag team.
So good. It's great. But, like, he's always just, like, he just accompanies them to the ring, and, like, occasionally he'll get in, like, for a couple seconds, do something stupid. But I remember one of the first episodes that I watched, he climbed to the top rope, put his hands in his pockets, and then just dove off onto people. And that was like his whole thing. And I was just like, okay, he's really funny. And so I started just looking up YouTube clips of him and just found so much of his independent stuff. And so I've seen how good he is at wrestling for the last few months. And every time that he comes out, it's kind of, he's sticking to that gimmick of like, you know, he'll come out, he'll do like his little kicks to the shin, you know, the crowd will be way into it, and then he'll get like super kicked in the face and roll out of the ring, and that's pretty much it, you know. And so when they announced that he was going to have his AEW like debut,
his like single, this was his single
debut.
One-on-one debut,
yeah, when they announced that he was going to have his debut at Revolution against the Bastard Pack, who is like the most intense man with the wettest hair in all of wrestling.
It's almost like just hair plugs on top, and then it drapes over in this weird way.
He looks like that Urukai from the end of Fellowship of the Ring.
Yes,
I wanted to give him a ponytail just so I could see his face. Come on, hun, let's get that up there.
And like he is like the most intense person. Like a lot of his matches end with like submissions. Like he's just this really like intense, angry energy, and like Orange Cassidy is just like the king of like not giving a shit. Like could care less if he's there. Like they call him the king of sloth style because he is just like the slowest moving, just couldn't care less attitude. And so I was really worried that at Revolution he was just going to go out there. It was going to be like a little joke match, you know, he was going to get his ass kicked and that was going to be it. But I think they did a really good job of like letting him shine, letting him do his thing, and like show how good of a wrestler that he really is, but not making him betray his gimmick. Like he very much, there were times when him and Pac were just like fighting so hard not to be laughing because like the things that they were doing were just so ridiculous. And I thought it was such a good break because the match right before that was Cody and MJF, which was one that's been this huge build up for the last 3 months. And the match right after them was the championship match with Jericho and Moxley, which is another one that's been building up for, 3-4 months. And so it was like this great kind of like low stakes match to kind of take the emotion from like really intense to we were all just laughing our asses off to then like getting back into the intensity for the championship match. And I think they navigated that so well, and I hope we get to see more of him in singles matches, and because I think he's just fun. He's just he's the people's champion, you know.
He's also kind of like that guy in Mortal Kombat who's just in a suit and he's always on his cell phone. Like he's
Johnny Cage.
He's he's not the movie star, but he's good looking. Yeah. He's aloof. He wears sunglasses, and he has a shirt of himself, which is of him wearing the shirt of himself, and on and on. Like it's just such a great mixture, and that is something you probably would not see in the WWE. And Tyler, I definitely want to get your insight on why wrestlers would prefer WWE or why wrestlers would prefer AEW, because they operate in some different ways, where this is going to be a fresh start for some. I think when AEW first started, I listened to a few podcasts like you, Josh, who mentioned wrestling, and they'll talk about it for 10 minutes, and I don't really know what's going on, but I know they felt more people were going to jump to AEW. And I haven't heard any follow-up on how WWE might have kept those same people, but it seems like they are getting people from Japan and Ring of Honor and Mexico. Yeah. So I'm wondering why you think, because we're going to talk Matt Hardy, very classic wrestler. There's a rumor, Reddit, Twitter rumor, that he may be coming over when his contract ends. Can you just give us a quick breakdown of like why that gimmick wouldn't be acceptable, and then what kind of outside the ring things would affect where a wrestler might go if AEW continues to grow?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, the big thing about WWE is Vince McMahon is in charge of literally everything. If Vince McMahon doesn't like what you're doing or what the story is, it is not going to get on his show. And that is, there are times where that has been very good. You can look at the Monday Night War with WCW and the stuff they did during the Attitude Era with The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin and Triple H. Like, that was like a huge time where the stuff Vince McMahon was doing was, he did no wrong basically through that time. But I think that can't last forever. And at this point also, a lot of the wrestlers who are in the business now are people who grew up during they don't have just Hulk Hogan or Macho Man Randy Savage or Bret Hart to look at. They have all these Attitude Era stars. Wrestling has also changed because of the internet. People know more about wrestling now and the business and what goes on behind the scenes and how you can use that to tell a story in the ring. And so I think that the wrestlers now are a lot smarter about telling their own stories. And in AEW, there are no writers. The performers basically get to figure out what that is, work their gimmicks, pick their angles, work with people they want to work with, and they just kind of come together and create these stories. And so I think that is really appealing to a lot of people. Also, the contracts in AEW are far less restrictive than WWE. If you are in WWE, you are never going to be on any other indie promotion or anything while you are in WWE. And at this point, if you're in WWE now, when your contract is up and you do want to appear on those, you can't use your character or whatever that you.
So they own everything.
Yeah.
Now,
well,
is that
and even
hard
like
to,
today in the AEW pay-per-view tonight, Chris Jericho is wrestling and Jim Ross said, "Oh, he's trying to get him in the walls of Jericho," which is a thing that is trademarked by the WWE. It's his finishing move.
Right.
But now it's what do they call it now? Do they call it the Lion Tamer now?
Oh yeah,
I think
Tamer,
they call it the Lion Tamer
hold.
now, which is like kind of harkening back to really classic Jericho. But yeah, even stuff like that where it's like it's hard, I think. And being able to have that freedom and kind of that flexibility is something that wrestlers, I think, within WWE, you look at someone like CM Punk or like the Hardys, who have been unhappy with WWE for a while. Those people want a little more freedom and are smart about what they're doing and know what works for them. And so I think it can be frustrating to be in an environment where that's not,
I'm glad there's someone else with money then. And I hope that I don't have animosity towards the WWE. I don't know how much I'm going to care about wrestling going forward, but I sure hope that forces them to care. I know health insurance too. Like they cover you better in the AEW.
Yeah. There's benefit. You're not like a contracted employee. It's like or a contract. I don't know what the term is there, but you're not just a contractor like you are in WWE, and so there are benefits. It lets people be like, hey, I also want to just go to Japan and do all the shit that they're doing over there, and they're pretty accommodating about that stuff. So yeah, it's really interesting, and I think it's cool to see. I think if AEW continues to be successful, I think you're going to see a lot of smaller promotions that also become more successful because you can start to kind of trade stars and have people appear and get buzz, and then they're watching.
When you get rivalries, I like that creative license because. I mean, honestly, even if in today's day and age, if you're a slight celebrity, you can make money online. And I wonder how much the WWE restricts you using your name to do an Instagram ad for tummy tea. That sounds stupid, but if you want to do your own podcast, if you want to act outside, like obviously John Cena is bigger than the WWE now, and I'm sure he can do whatever. But you got to wonder if other people are just so limited in the projects they can try and advance what they're doing on, and it is hard if you're a creative person and you want to take, and this happens in television shows too, you want to take your character a certain way, or you just have something and you have one person who can say no and take it away. And I will say that the tag team match, which I think was probably the best one, was with Kenny Omega and Hangman. I thought those were two very WWE-ish guys.
Sure.
But I think what's going on with you guys kind of explained to me a couple of the gangs, the Inner Circle, the Elite, and then like all the heel turns that are going on, that story keeps it interesting, and I wonder like if those guys have that opportunity here where they might not otherwise.
Yeah, well, and I think let's talk about that match because I do want to see. I'm such a sucker for Kenny Omega. Like Kenny Omega is kind of what got me into wrestling.
Yeah.
And his style of wrestling and the storytelling that he does in the ring, I think is so subtle and good. But one of the big things is, he's been in Japan for, I want to say like probably over 10 years.
Wow.
And he's been, he's had a lot of success over there. And a lot of the stories that he's been involved in, and he continues to be involved in AEW, are very simple. It's just about relationships between him and another wrestler, and that going bad, or it keeps everything so simple that he doesn't have to cut a lot of big promos. The focus isn't necessarily on that. It's about stuff that happens in the ring or stuff that happens just outside the ring. And because of that, there's storylines where it's like, if you want to get the story, just watch the wrestling matches. You can see the arcs within those matches and the things that happen and the things that he chooses to do or the things that he almost does and then chooses. It's like all of these levels of psychology just in the athleticism that he does. It's just really cool.
There were a lot of unsaid things in that match that I still don't understand because I wasn't quite following along with. But you guys had thought, like, this guy might turn or this might happen. Mm-hmm. And there were a lot of subtle and emotional looks, or like guys who are on the same team, like kind of antagonizing their partners a little bit. So I didn't get that, but that now that you say that, it makes complete sense that that's his style. And if you keep with him, it's that's so much more subtle than say what The Rock or The Undertaker would do.
Which, and not to say it's better, because there's absolute value in what The Rock does.
But it's a different nuance.
For sure.
Yeah, and that's what I thought was so amazing about the tag team championship was, like, one, I thought it was the best wrestled match of the whole night. Like, I thought athletically, I mean, from a wrestling standpoint, like, they did some insane shit in that match. It went on for so long. Like, it's in a lot of matches, it'll kind of get to the point where it's like, okay, he has him pinned. Oh, and he kicked out. Okay, I was kind of ready for that match to be over. But, like, with the tag team championship, every time that someone was pinned, I was like, no, this can't be over yet. Like,
I felt and there were like 47 kickouts.
Yeah, like there were so many. Like, and it just gets me every time because it's like, oh no, like I want to see him make this move. Like I want to see them do this thing. And like there was all of that going on, and then all of the nuance of like, this is a group of 4 people who are the elite. They are in a faction together. And, like, the Young Bucks have always been a tag team. Like, they're widely regarded as one of the best tag teams in the world. And, like, Kenny Omega and Hangman Adam Page are, like, 2 of the best singles wrestlers. And just a couple months ago, like, they got booked as a tag team. And they, like, did a match and they won it. And it was like, oh, okay, cool. And then, like, they slowly started to build up this steam and build up this momentum. And they ended up beating SCU, which was like the first tag team championship for AEW, and they took over the championship about a month or 2 ago. And so it's kind of been this interesting thing of like Hangman has kind of wanted to distance himself from the elite. He's kind of wanted to go his own way, and as he was doing that, like he was being forced to compete in these tag team matches with Kenny Omega, and it all kind of culminated with them going up against the Young Bucks. And like there was so much nuance with, like, I mean, Matt Jackson and Hangman, like, truly hating each other, and, like, Kenny Omega and Nick Jackson having to kind of, like, stop their own partners from going too far a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And, like, I think it's been the best display of, like, storytelling that AEW has had in a single match. Yeah. Like, my emotions were all over the place in that match. Like, after that match, I had to get up and, like, walk around for a bit and, like, get a drink because I was just like, that was 45 minutes. I don't even know if it was 45 minutes.
It was a long time.
It felt like a lifetime, and, like, I loved every second of it. And, like, I'm really interested to see where it goes because my big prediction was that Kenny Omega was going to betray Hangman, and Hangman was still going to win the match, like, single-handedly.
Did you wish there would have been kind of a bigger storyline jump, like there would have been something crazy, someone comes out or something like that happens?
I feel like that's what I wanted. I wanted there to be a big thing, but I think that they hinted at it enough, and they kind of set up where they can make an interesting story out of it and make it a more gradual process than just like, an instant, because like there were a lot of things that Matt Jackson was doing in the ring that I was like, oh, he's turning heel. Like he's going to become someone that like antagonizes the crowd, which is not the Young Bucks at all. They are like crowd favorites up until this point. And then there were a lot of stuff that Hangman was doing that I was like, oh, he's turning heel. And so I was like, I don't know which one I want to turn heel. I don't know what rivalry I want.
I will tell you by a mile, I want one of the Young Bucks. First of all, I'm disappointed their last name isn't Bucks. But I want one of the Young Bucks to cut off his hair and betray his brother and go complete heel. Like, I was ready. I want them to fight each other.
Yeah.
I was just...
that would be awesome. I would love that.
I was just ready for something crazy. And I'll tell you, I tried to watch Dynamite on Wednesday in preparation for this, and the first match was a 30-minute Iron Man match, I guess, between the Bastard, who's the one who faced Orange Cassidy, and Kenny Omega, right?
Yeah.
Who was in this tag team match against the Young Bucks. And I got a little bored. It got a little lame the way they were just kind of... It got kind of monotonous. So when you say, like, oh, this match was 45 minutes, I'm like, man, that was so much better of an entertaining 45 minutes.
Yeah.
It totally made it worth it. And that just shows you, like, what they can do with this. And the way you, like, look forward to those storylines and things, it is the perfect... But someone's winning. It's just... That's why it's sports entertainment, in my opinion. Because these are very athletic people, and it's such a great blend of competition and story.
Yeah, and I think that's what a lot of the wrestlers in AEW do so well, is like the emphasis is not on like, well, I need to win this match because, you know, I'm Kenny Omega and I'm the biggest wrestler in the world. It's like, okay, how can we make the most interesting story out of this? And, you know, really like the wins and losses, I mean, they matter, but not really. You know, like they matter from an outside perspective to be like, oh, you know, Jon Moxley is undefeated. He has never lost a match, you know. But really, like, it's because that's a story that they've been telling, you know. And I think that's just really, it's been so good. And there was a moment at the very end of the tag match, like after the match was over, where the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega were all standing in the middle of the ring, and Hangman was out on the side, and I swear I was like, they're all gonna super kick him. Like that's so going to be this is going to be like the big betrayal, like after the match, and then Kenny Omega goes over with Hangman and they leave together. And so I don't know. The storytelling in this Revolution was just so good.
Yeah. Well, and I think that it's worth noting, like, that was all done without mics. Like, there was no, you know, there wasn't, it wasn't them fighting verbally or anything like that. There's just some really great moments like that. Yeah, I want to hear more from, like, guys who this is your first time. Were there any other moments that either you connected with or that you really didn't connect with when it seemed like the audience was connecting with a lot of stuff? Because that is like, I remember watching some wrestling and being like, man, they are eating all this shit. Like, they love everything. And now I'm that. Now I'm the person who's like, calm the fuck down, you
It was
asshole.
fun watching you, by the way. I know you were like worried about it. I think it was fun watching with other people.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, were there any like moments for you guys that really stuck out?
I think for me, it was nice to go back to, like, as a little kid. Like this tonight it was just good entertainment. Like to be able to be in a group like that and to watch together, it just felt really fun. It was from an entertainment point of view, like as somebody who doesn't really know storylines or anything like that, to be able to jump into something like this and immediately just have a ton of fun. Like, I think that speaks a lot to, like, the medium and just how just entertaining everything is. Like, it's a lot of fun to watch this stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
I will confess I got a little bored during the tag team one.
Okay, yeah.
It did go on a little long for me, but like I wasn't looking for specific moves or specific story points. Mm-hmm. But I kept thinking about, how do you rehearse this? How do the logistics work for choreographing something like this? How much did they practice? Like, that's the stuff I want to know, because watching these super athletic professional people do this for 30 or 40 minutes, however long it was, I was exhausted on their behalf.
Well, it's one of those things that, like, I do have to catch myself, like, and be like, holy this has been going on for 25 minutes. Like, I've watched that man flip out of the ring 6 times in the last 20 minutes. And now he's like lifting someone up 3 times, you know, like it really is crazy. Yeah.
When you think it is, it's not, these are, as I've been told, not 100% choreographed either way. Yeah. It's more bullet points, and just the fact that these guys know when he makes a certain motion, I'm going to jump, I'm going to take a punch. Like, and then a lot of the stuff on the microphone is also it's all about character and improvisation. So yes, they are bad actors, but they are also great performers. And you kind of have to remember it because it can be a slog, and maybe they do knock each other out once in a while so they can get a rest and then come back later. But it was so fun to watch that. And when you have 4 guys to work with, it made it work. But certainly any match that I think goes over like 15 minutes can get that way if you're not invested or there's not some higher value.
Yeah. Well, and I think I've said it a million times on this podcast before, get your shots ready. It is modern day Shakespeare. And one of the things about Shakespeare, the way it was done in Shakespeare's day, is you basically got a cue script, which was your lines and the line that came right before your line. So you knew what to listen for. So then you'd say the words that you memorized. You know what I mean? And I think in a lot of ways, professional wrestling is that. I mean, these, the benefit, especially in that tag team match, these are guys who have worked together, at least once a week, every week for the last 6 or 7 years. You know what I mean? So they know each other really well. There's a level of trust there. And because of that, I think you can show up to the ring and have this really fresh feeling match because you haven't rehearsed it into the ground. But what you have rehearsed are all the pieces that go into that. They're all so proficient at what they do. And because of that, they can go out and do maybe some improvised spots. They can find those moments that the crowd loves, where they, it's working with that live audience of being like, we're going to give this a moment and let the audience kind of do what they want to do. And then we'll get back into the match, that kind of stuff. And so, but in other cases, I think, I look at another match. The first match that we saw tonight, was, Dustin Rhodes and Jake Hager. This is the first time that Jake Hager wrestled on AEW. Mm-hmm. And I think him and Dustin probably worked together maybe briefly when they were both at WWE. But yeah, those are performers who are much less familiar with each other in the ring. So I don't know how much went into that. And I think part of that kind of shows, you know what I mean? You can
that was the match that we first watched. And I was my first actual wrestling match I watched from beginning to end. And I was like, oh no, tonight's going to be long. That match.
Dude, what about when he kissed that woman?
I mean, the match wasn't without moments of holy shit. But everything in between was kind of, honestly, that match was really painful for me to watch.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Which immediately had a wonderful palate cleanser of. It's hard to say if it was my favorite match of the night, but what was his fucking name? Darby Allin. Darby fucking Allin is the best thing. Okay, there's so many good things we saw because the tag team was I think hands down was probably the best match.
Yeah.
I'm right with you, Josh. 45 minutes didn't seem like 45 minutes to me. Mm-hmm. I was oddly engaged that whole time.
Yeah.
But after that slog of a first match to have, who was the other guy's name?
Sammy Guevara.
Sammy Guevara just. Or I think he was on the outside of the ring. Yeah. He comes in, does his little intro. He's still on the ring, but he's on the outside holding on the ropes with his back to the center. Darby Allin comes in, who is a man who is half dead, who has half of his face made like a skull, but he's also a British anarchist skater. And already I'm more interested. He walks down the aisle. And you're like, okay, here's the fanfare bit. Nope. Jumps in the ring, sprints over to the other side, doesn't take off his jacket or anything, and dives. Was it head first or feet first?
Yeah, head first.
Dive head first in between the ropes into Sammy and into off the ring into the crowd area. And I'm like, hell yes, this is what we needed.
Yeah.
Which this match featured many wonderful moments, and probably the highlight was Sammy put him onto a table out of the ring. He sets up a table and starts just building a fucking fort, which takes a while.
Yeah.
And, he just lays him on this table and then climbs back up and climbs onto what is that the official name for where
the turnbuckle, the top turnbuckle.
The top of the turnbuckle. Does a double front flip off of it and lands on his back on this guy and crashes through the table. And that was okay, I get it now, and that's what I love too, because that had the flash and the flair of the crazy athletics, but it also had the stuff I really like. I mentioned earlier of just the crazy personas that are just super gimmicky, and I love that shit. Yeah. So that was definitely a really nice moment, which speaking of crashing through, I mean, like, I don't know. Here's how I'd kind of rate the matches, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think number one's that tag team. 2 is that Darby Allin match for me.
Yeah.
Then honestly, I think I think the main event's kind of low down for me.
Me
like,
too. Yeah.
I
actually agree with that.
What was that other one with the dude with the scar on his face who had the really
Cody
big
Rhodes,
storyline?
yeah, you're
Jeff,
right.
I think that was like my third, and then the main event was like my fourth favorite, and then everything else is garbage.
You're throwing Orange Cassidy in the garbage?
Oh no! Oh shit! No! Oh,
What have you done?
oh shit! Because that.
Oh, shit!
Oh,
He's
man.
gonna hear this, and you're
No,
never gonna be
I
best
so take
friends.
that back. Wow, the main event is really low on my list then, because that is like 2 or 3.
Like,
so,
honestly, I enjoyed the main event because I like John Moxley, and I think he's really cool. I've just really liked his build-up, but I think after all of the crazy shit that did happen throughout that pay-per-view, like, it kind of went how I expected it to go, you know? And I think that's what's so great about AEW is, like, that first match with JK or Dustin Rhodes is like, okay, yeah, these are 2 very big boys doing very big, and Dustin Rhodes, very old boys doing some really impressive stuff. But then, like, Sammy Guevara and Darby Allin was like just complete change of pace, complete change of persona, and like complete change of style of wrestling. And I think it's just so much fun to see. Like, you almost get whiplash watching it every week because, like, there are like those more traditional wrestlers like Cody Rhodes, Dustin Rhodes are definitely fall into that kind of Southern wrestling, you know, a lot of grappling, a lot of really technical stuff. But then you have really high flyers like Darby and the Bastard Pack, Sammy Guevara, and I think it just keeps things fresh, you know, it keeps things interesting. And yeah, because like we got to the end of Revolution and I had completely forgotten about that match, and honestly it was one of my favorites. Like, that, being able to watch that in a group of people and everyone just like, we're all reacting together, like Sammy Guevara's doing a double front flip and we're all like, holy shit, what did he just do? Like, that is insane. And like, to me, that's the joy of AEW. Like, I think that's what they're doing so well right now.
Yeah. Well, and Darby Allin is another example of one of those people. It's like, that guy does not belong in WWE. Like,
No.
he's so weird. He skateboards into the ring.
he's an enigma.
He's an enigma. But he's another one that, like, he frequently he films his own, like, spots that they play during Dynamite, and he does some really weird shit that, like, it's just, it's cool because you know that's 100% coming from him, and he's going all in on these really interesting choices. But yeah, let's talk about the women's match real quick.
Yeah.
Because that's a place that AEW is not doing great, and that I think WWE, especially over the last, like, you know, we talked about Fighting With My Family. Paige really ushered in, like, a new era of female wrestlers where it wasn't like, we're going to hire 36 models and teach them enough wrestling they can powerbomb someone through a table. And it's like, oh, now we have these girls who are coming and auditioning that grew up watching wrestling and that love to wrestle. And so now you have a lot of people who are wrestlers first and kind of everything else after. And WWE has all that talent, which is go watch some stuff. Well, like, Becky Lynch is the women's champion still, I think. I'm pretty sure. Becky Lynch is incredible. She's really great. She's kind of the whole package. She is just great on the mic and just kicks people's asses. But that is one of the things about AEW is because WWE has done such a great job at fostering that talent, a lot of the female talent in AEW is very young and very new to wrestling, and you can see that a little bit. But I think the bigger problems are that they're not being given the right opportunities.
Yeah.
But I do want to talk about Nyla Rose, just the match that we watched versus Nyla Rose and Chris Statlander. Nyla Rose is just a beast of a woman who...
I don't know if I've ever seen a woman, and I mean, this is a a positive for AEW. I've never seen a woman that big in WWE.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because they have men from Rey Mysterio size to the Big Show size.
Yeah.
And like for someone like that, she's huge, she's a beast, but she's super athletic.
Yeah.
And like she could do everything you want a wrestler to do. And I think you said the person she faced, who is apparently an alien, stat ladder or something, I don't know. Which
I wish
had only been wrestling for a couple of years. So true, I wanted like some cosmic storytelling.
See, and
but I
really-
was intrigued.
And really, that is, to me, the biggest weakness of AEW's women's division is that they don't have any storytelling right now. Like, you look at the men's division, like, you've had these stories. I mean, even like, not even like the main events, not even the championship matches. I mean, MJF and Cody has been building up since the last pay-per-view in November when he had his heel turn. In the pre-show, there is an SCU versus Dark Order that has been building up for months and months and months. And like, they have these stories that even if they're not main events, they're being built up. And AEW's first women's champion, her name was Riho. She won the championship and then just didn't wrestle for like weeks and weeks and
Well,
weeks.
and she was from Japan. It was one of those things where, like, every time she was on Dynamite, it meant she was flying from Japan, flying back to Japan, you know, and so it's an interesting thing.
And so it was like, you had this women's champion that wasn't really wrestling all that much, but then they would have a pay-per-view, her title would be on the line, and she would defend it. And then she would disappear again. And, like, they have tried to build up some stories and just, they haven't leaned in enough to any of the gimmicks. Like, Chris Statlander is an alien, and it's like, cool, do something with that other than her not understanding how to tie shoes or her not
Did they really do
understanding
that?
how to sit in a chair.
They're like little kind of sketches and gimmicks on the YouTube channel. Lots of stuff with her and Orange Cassidy that's really fun, actually, and I would honestly, there's like a couple, there's actually really only, I would really only say Kip Sabian and Penelope Ford are the only like intergender, like, kind of. But I would honestly love to see them fight Statlander and Orange Cassidy just because I think that'd be an insane thing to watch. But
and then
anyways.
they have some really talented women in the women's division, but they're not giving them really any tools to work with. They're not giving them interesting stories to tell. And so, like, tonight, Nyla Rose, she became the champion 2 weeks ago, and, you know, her title was on the line, and I was like, if they take her title away from her, this is just bullshit.
suck,
like, because she should have been the champion from the beginning, in my opinion. I think she's the more interesting story, and now that she is the champion, I think it builds avenues where you can make some interesting stories about, like, okay, how are the women going to work together to dethrone her, you know, because she's so strong, she's so powerful that, like, one-on-one, you're not gonna beat her, you know.
Do they have like, and I guess this is a criticism, like a token female match every Dynamite, or not always?
Well, I would say almost every Dynamite they have one. And I think the bigger problem was they built up a storyline, and then we were kind of talking about it before. I think that one of the wrestlers is dealing with a lot of injuries and is maybe retiring very soon, and I think that kind of kept that from developing, and so they kind of had to scrap that, and we're starting from zero.
Because she was kind of supposed to be, like, the big muscle of, like, this new faction that was starting. So, with injuries to her, they just kind of were like, okay, forget all of that stuff that was going on. Like, don't think about that anymore. And guess we'll start from square one again.
Yeah.
So
That's because everything I watched of WWE when I was a kid, I only remember like 3 or 4 of the divas. I think they were definitely more on the model side. A lot more of their stories had to do with the men in probably a misogynistic way.
Absolutely. Yes.
So other than Stephanie McMahon, who's now like actually has a huge role in WWE and everything, they've obviously got Ronda Rousey, Charlotte Flair. Like they seem to have, but it took them a long time. They had an all women pay-per-view last year sometime.
Yeah. Which was one of their better pay-per-views last year also.
So, you know, time for the AEW to work on it. Tyler, I'm wondering if that's a weakness, or is there anything else where you do look at if the AEW is going to be a national brand and maybe not try and get huge, but just continue to grow and put on a really good show? Do they have any other weaknesses you'd like to see change?
I mean, I think that the initial complaint I had was that there weren't necessarily a lot of developed storylines. But I think that between kind of the last pay-per-view and this one, they've really stepped that up. Even the Cody Rhodes stuff for me connected on such an emotional level in ways that I didn't expect it to.
Do you think they're just shooting for less drama, like without a writer's room? It's more like a lot more of their story is wrestling story, and so you may get a little bit less of this outside stuff, which could feel lacking at times or could increase the value of the story.
Yeah. Well, and I think that the thing about Dynamite is you get a lot more wrestling than you do watching Raw or SmackDown at this point, because so much of Raw and SmackDown is promos in between.
45-minute entrances.
Yeah, the entrances the entrances for the pay-per-view were long. Those are much shorter on the weekly show. It's a much tighter show.
I've seen like half of WrestleMania, and it was that means I watched 10 hours of WrestleMania. Okay,
Yeah.
Man, that was crazy.
I mean, today we were just trying to watch the Fiend's entrance for WWE because Tyler was like, "Oh, he has a sweet entrance. Like, you should watch it." And we watched it, and seriously, it was like 5 minutes.
And the pay-per-view entrance, and I was like, oh,
and his
God.
whole entrance is like all the lights go out, and he very like slowly walks down the ramp, like carrying this lantern, and it's like this really menacing thing. But like 2 minutes in, it's like, holy shit, this is still going. Like, are you serious? Like, oh my gosh.
That also reminds me, I was hearing all this rock music that I was like, oh yeah, this exists, and there's so much of it during wrestling that I just do not hear otherwise.
Yeah.
Oh man, yeah, it's junior high is alive and well in the hearts of wrestlers everywhere. But I think, they're doing a lot of really great things, and I think that is a thing. I think it's at this point it is hard to just watch a WWE pay-per-view like with people who've never seen it and feel like you're getting as much out of it. You know what I mean? This seems to have the right level of spectacle and passion behind it.
Have they really done anything crazy? And obviously gimmicks can be cheap, and we've kind of talked about why they didn't need it, but have they done like TLC matches, Hell in a Cell, like that kind of crazy stuff?
Yeah, so last pay-per-view ended with Kenny Omega and John Moxley.
Oh, is this the barbed wire thing?
Yeah.
I was like wanting crazy, and then you guys told me about barbed wire, and I was like, oh, I'm out. That's
Yeah, it's insane. They've done stuff like that. I mean, the Cody Rhodes had their first steel cage match a couple weeks ago, which was really, really good. But yeah, and they're doing some weird shit that they advertise that they're like,
like
you know what
rings.
it is, and I'm like, I don't know because I don't know enough. About
2
wrestling.
rings, 1 steel cage.
It's like
and
It's like one cage that goes over 2 rings,
guess,
and then 2 different matches happening, but then they're also obviously going to
and
collide.
you have to call in on your phone, and whoever gets the most votes doesn't get tax dropped on them or something. It'll be an idol.
I think tax TAX.
They get taxes dropped on them.
So that sucks.
But yeah, I mean, do you guys have any like other thoughts or anything from your first foray into? Man, we really is 3 in the deep end of a 4-hour fucking thing.
It felt like 3. It was great. No, really, we obviously we hung out with our friends. We had pizza. That was great. I think I'm curious to see. I'm gonna watch because I'm gonna go in 2 weeks. So next week I'm definitely gonna watch to keep up with everything. I'm curious to see. I'll report back on where wrestling lands after paying more attention. But you're right. We talked about the WWE Network a little bit, which is like their subscription service and how they have so many documentaries.
Yeah.
That history and almost like the best of and the creativity behind it is just so interesting to me that. But I'm glad that we went out and we just did something like this, and it was a great group of people to do it with.
Yeah. For sure.
It was never mind. There was a really good orgy metaphor in there, but I didn't quite have it before I kept going.
Classic Sky Miles. Thanks for watching wrestling.
Thanks for letting us force you to watch an uncomfortable amount of wrestling with us.
It's definitely one of those things that I wanted to experience, and I think it's still something that I definitely don't have the time to get into on a regular basis, but it is something I would like to participate in a group setting.
In other words, Tyler, you get those pay-per-views and we'll be there.
Yeah, another one coming up in May. So
I think as long as it's not super free and there's a good amount of time in between, it's definitely something I'd want to keep doing and participate in. And yeah, I think I'm a bad person though, because sometimes when in the matches that especially that aren't as exciting, like the main event tonight, the best parts when people actually got real hurt. Like seeing someone actually like get real hurt and like they're like, no, I have a job to do and I'm going to keep doing it, is like awe-inspiring. And like I'm like, oh man, they're badass. I wish I was badass. And I'm like, oh, I'm enjoying this, and someone's getting hurt, and I kind of feel bad.
Dude, Mick Foley's the guy for you.
I know. Watching the highlight videos, like
hurt.
that chair video was so conflicting for me. I was like, this is crazy.
You need to watch. I'm going to send you the video of him taking like 12. Well, I don't know if it's 12. Maybe it was only 9. But he took 9 unprotected chair shots to the head from The Rock. And then immediately after the match, had to go backstage and get 14 stitches in his forehead.
There's like a joke about this in Fighting with My Family, where he's like has to ask her father, and they're trying to book a show, and he asks his friend, he's like, "Can you take a bowling ball to the nuts?" And then later in the movie, Zach Zodiac like dives onto a bunch of tacks, and I'm like, I'm out at that point. But there definitely is some entertainment factor in that. The more pain.
Well, and you think about it, it is one of those things too. I think about being on stage, and there is this level of like rush where you can get through a lot of those moments. Mick Foley did some stuff that you shouldn't be able to get through ever, and did, and just. I mean, I just watched the thing where Stone Cold Steve Austin basically like fractured one of his vertebrae and like finished a match. He like couldn't feel his arms or legs. And
so many neck injuries in wrestling.
It's incredibly dangerous. But yeah, that shit's insane. There's a weird permission that you get, I think, with professional wrestling, because for most of those things, barring away from the accidents, they're choosing to do or have agreed to do, and they do them. We were talking about Edge earlier, but there's the famous ladder match between Christian and Edge and the Hardy Boys, where he spears Jeff Hardy about 20 feet in the air, and they just land in the ring. And one of my favorite moments is in one of those interviews, he was like, the question I always get asked about that is, how many times did you guys practice that? And Edge looked at him, he's like, you think I did that more than once? Like, are you insane? Like, if I had practiced that, no one would have ever seen it, because I never would have done it again. Like, there's a level of insanity to professional wrestlers that is very
Mick Foley is a little crazy. He has some alter egos. Yeah. He has a great guest spot on Boy Meets World season 6, just in case you're wondering.
Also in Peanut Butter Falcon, he's the referee at the end of Peanut Butter Falcon.
Peanut Butter Falcon, wonderful wrestling adjacent.
Another great wrestling
movie. Which is that's interesting that wrestling has spawned a few good movies about it.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's crazy to me that these, like, we talk about like the permission that they have that you don't see in other forms of entertainment, where they literally are putting their bodies out there like that, and what that does for the audience. Like, I still remember, I will never forget the event where I saw Macho Man Randy Savage elbow drop somebody off of the top of a cage. Like, I think he dislocated his shoulder doing that move. But that is seared in my brain. I will never forget that. And like, from an entertainment business point of view, like, that's gold. Like, that, to have something happen in an event like that where your audience is never going to forget it, like, that's incredible. Those are the moments, like, as an entertainer or performer, like, you want your audience members to remember those things.
Yeah.
And it gives you that rush, and they are professionals, and I'm sure they try and do it safe as they can, as much as they can, but a lot of it's just like, it's going to hurt. The punches may be fake, but there are some of those things where you're jumping and dropping that you can't fix. There were about 4 minutes during this where I was like, this would be kind of fun. And then the rest of the time I was like, no, I'm going to sit next to JR, because you can just say the dumbest stuff and talk about wrestling. Just be excited. Pretend you understand anatomy. Oh, my. Right, cock.
Down to Liverville.
Yeah, right down to Liverville.
Oh, man. Oh, that was the mid to upper body.
No, well, and I think that's interesting because John Moxley did an interview I think it was just 2 weeks ago, on AEW's weekly podcast that they're doing, and he talks about like wrestling against your friend and wrestling against like someone that you know. Like, you know, instinctively you'd be like, oh, you'd want to go a little bit easier on them, you know, because like they're your friend and you don't want to risk hurting them. And he was like, no, like when you're truly comfortable with someone, like you can go in the ring and you guys can just beat the shit out of each other. And he's like, because there's that level of trust that you have, you know, you wouldn't necessarily have with someone that, you know, you've just stepped into the ring against. This is the first time you're seeing them. And I think that's why the Young Bucks and the Kenny Omega and Hangman match works so well, is those guys have worked together through Japan, through so much stuff, and it's like there's that level of trust where it's like we're gonna do insane shit to each other and they're going to feel like hell tomorrow. I mean, they probably feel like hell right now, but like because they have that established trust, because they've worked with each other so much, they can really push the limit on things. Yeah. And it's the thing, like I watch it and I'm like, man, wrestling would be so cool. And then I watch like 3 seconds more of it and I'm like, this looks like hell. Like I don't know how the human body can take what they're doing to
anytime they jump out of the ring from the ring, I'm like, how the hell are you doing this every night? Like I literally cannot think of a way you can do that without actually hurting yourself.
Yeah.
And there were a couple matches tonight where you see them walk out back up the ramp and their bodies are visibly injured, and you're like, holy shit.
Well, there was
and next week you got to do it again.
Yeah, and there was a Chris Statlander spot tonight where she clearly missed the rope on a move she was trying to do, and like
the backflip involved.
Yeah, like going off. She was taking Nyla Rose off the top turnbuckle. She was on the second rope, and she had missed a step, and like I think they fell okay, but like it's things like that. It's like you can make one wrong move and you can end somebody's career, you know, and that is kind of the morbid driving force for a lot of wrestling is like, I want to see good wrestling, but also like a sick part of me is like, if someone gets really messed up here, like that's some good entertainment.
I can always say for the rest of my life, I remember watching that, you know, which is like a story.
Exactly.
You can say.
Well, and that's not to like blow any more smoke up Mick Foley's ass, because I know he's listening. That's why I want to please be my friend. But like that guy, pretty early in his career, got his ear fell off like during a match, which is insane. And he continued to wrestle. And he talks about there's a really great that you mentioned that chair video in ECW. They asked for a chair from the audience and received 70 in a horrifying moment. But him and Terry Funk were known for these extremely hardcore matches in Japan. Like they would do matches where instead of ropes, it's barbed wire. It's 3 strips of barbed wire around the outside. They did matches that involved C4 around the edges of that then blew up and like burned Mick Foley's face. And Terry Funk and Mick Foley, they were always in these matches together. And in Beyond the Mat, which Beyond the Mat is a great documentary if you want to watch. It's a documentary inside WWE, but it seems to have gotten a lot more creative freedom. It's R-rated because it's not the type of thing you might expect from WWE. But this guy got a lot of access to that. But he's interviewing Terry Funk and Mick Foley, and he's like, "How do you not like kind of hate each other after all the things, like you've done some really gnarly shit to each other, like how are you okay?" And Mick Foley and Terry Funk kind of laugh and they're like, "We learned really early that the more we hurt each other, the more we got paid." It's like, that's also amazing. Like it's really amazing that there's all these levels to wrestling they're so fascinating. And in a lot of ways, wrestling is just my Keeping Up with the Kardashians or The Bachelor. Like there's enough reality there, and it mixed in with just a bunch of other garbage, and then just pure athleticism that it just does that for me. So, but yeah, well, let's we've talked. This is probably very long. and I promised a 60 to 90 minute podcast. So
We're
we're
getting
gonna
close to 90.
Oh shit!
Oh, boy.
We're gonna go ahead and take a quick break. We'll be back next week. We're gonna do some recommendations, but we'll be back next week to talk with our guest. You're gonna tell me if I'm saying this right, Michelle Oberg.
Yes.
About the movie. It's Kind of a Funny Story.
Yes.
Starring someone, and I know Zach Galifianakis is in it.
Yeah, that's all I know.
Sure.
Too.
Yeah, it's I've seen it years ago, and I'm excited to revisit it. But we're going to be watching that next week. If you want to reach out to us, our email is rewatchersonthepod@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at rewatcherspod. And we'll be back right after this musical break. From Justin, the Jazz Hammer. Okay, recommendations?
Taking names, I'm pounding asses. Oh, wait, I'm being informed that I shouldn't probably say pounding asses anymore.
Yeah, take ass, pound
So I'm going
names.
to, in the spirit of my musical persona, I'm going to say shredding instead.
Welcome back to the unsanctioned recommendation section of Rewatchers in the Ring. Josh, what do you have for us?
So I have an album that I have become absolutely obsessed with over the past 2 weeks. It is called Honeymoon by Beach Bunny. It is the most listenable album that I can think of right now. I have just become obsessed with it. It is 9 songs long and runs about 25 minutes. So I find myself listening to it like 9 or 10 times a day because I'm uncontrollable, I guess.
What genre are we talking?
It's kind of a
Punk.
Yeah, pop punk.
Ish.
Yeah, it's definitely a female vocalist, which I just have a soft spot in my heart for a good female punk vocalist. Oh shit. But yeah, it's really good. It reminds me of when I first started listening to Joyce Manor. Like that was an album that they're
Self-titled one?
Yeah, self-titled album.
Again, that's
like
under 20
15 minutes.
Yeah, it's not long at all.
Like it's the kind of thing where like, I'll turn it on and just be driving around town and then be like, holy shit, I've listened to this album 3 times. Like, but everything flows so well. It's a really, really good album. So go give it a listen.
What's the name again?
It is Honeymoon by Beach Bunny.
Adding it now.
Some good shit.
Cool. Mitchell, what do you have for us?
I have 2 real quick. The first one is not necessarily a media thing, but I'm just going to give anyone listening permission to go on a conspiracy theory deep dive. That's my recommendation. Just I don't do it too often but I listened to Joe Rogan's interview with Edward Snowden, which I think was like from November or something, and then I also read an AMA about someone in an egalitarian commune out in Virginia, where these people live pretty much in just a very naturalistic and it's a socialist society, but it's very small. I think his is only like 90 people, and there is a bunch of crap talking about how it's a cult, and he was kind of seeming to try and sell people on it. But it just made me really interested in how those turn to cults or how close they are, and then that with Edward Snowden feeling about the conspiracy theories of the government. And the fact that I don't have a job, I was just reading a lot of crazy shit. As far as media goes, I would, so go read some conspiracy theory. I've been watching Hunters, which is essentially a 1970s in America, undercover Nazis, pretty much trying to start the Fourth Reich, a bunch of, kind of a gang of Jewish and other people who are, working with this group, hunting down these Nazis. And I'm only 4 episodes in, and it's uneven. It has some like comic book camp, which is great, and it has some very intense, horrific stuff, obviously, to do with the Holocaust. And so a lot of people are calling it uneven, and that might be a great word, but I'm enjoying it. And it's not – everyone's calling it Inglourious Basterds. I don't think it's anything like that, but it is violent, and they're hunting Nazis. So if you enjoy it, you might like Hunters. And – freaking Al Pacino, like, let's just talk about how this guy's on the map this year.
Guy.
He did he's been in 2 movies in this show within the last 4 months. So I think it's a worthy watch. You'll know within the first episode is 90 minutes. That's a little tough, but watch the first 2, you'll know if you like it or not.
Cool. That looks really interesting. Like the trailers for that have like really intrigued
It's
me.
on Prime. If you've seen How I Met Your Mother, Ted Mosby is literally playing Ted Mosby, along with Alcina.
Literally.
I'm not kidding. And then Logan Lerman is the star, and you've probably seen him in like some coming of age tales and some YA stuff, and I think he's good. I think it's a lot of fun.
Cool.
And I like watching Nazis die.
Radical opinion.
I'm only here for the hot takes, baby.
Gwen, what did you have for us?
Oh man, guys, I don't have the emotional energy to start a show. So I'm sorry.
Flee to your fort of books.
It really is. It's so ridiculously hard for me to sit down and start a new TV show. It's bad. But so I'm going to recommend. I've been lately allowing or exploring music that I never allowed myself to listen to when I was growing up because of religious reasons, etc. But the song that I discovered that I just smile every time I think about it, it's Let's Have a Kiki by the Scissor Sisters.
Okay, yeah. Man, I haven't listened to
Scissor Sisters was on your list of things you couldn't listen to?
I had never heard it. I had never heard of it. It was just on a playlist of those types of songs. And the first comment of the YouTube video I've been watching is just the gay Macarena. And it just makes me happy, and I love it in the end.
Okay, yeah. That's a good... not enough Scissor Sisters recommendations in 2020.
Actually, I've never had a conversation with any other human being until now about the Scissor Sisters. So there we go.
I thought the Scissor Sister was something completely different.
So what I have to recommend this week is I went and saw a movie this Thursday, the hot movie that everyone is talking about. It's the new My Hero Academia movie. It's an anime.
Get off Tyler's corner, Tyler.
I know, I'm sorry. I'm encroaching on your territory. But it's
You want to
real
back
good.
the fuck up, otaku?
I'm just the announcer. Let me get out of here. Ring that bell. But
Wait, did you go see this in theaters?
yeah. So this is the second movie they released. I went and saw the first one in theaters as well, but it was kind of this special event, like a Fathom Events kind of thing. And it did incredibly well in America. And this time they were just like, we're just going to release it like it's a normal fucking movie. And it had like 6 showtimes at the theater up by me. Wow. And it's really good. My Hero Academia is a really great anime if you are interested in, if you've never watched an anime and are maybe interested in it. It is a shonen anime, so it's kind of that I guess like the PG-13 anime that is pretty, it's still fine for younger kids probably, not like super young, but it's just about, it's probably the best superhero story I've seen in a very long time. And the movie is really great, and it deals with a lot of just really universal emotions, and also just has people with wacky superpowers that then get really cool reasons to use them. Like a guy who his power, like everyone basically, the setup is that something happens and humans are just manifest what they call quirks, and those are their superpowers. And because of that, villains have risen, and professional hero is now a job that you can pursue.
So they got heroes, right?
Exactly. And there's a guy who shoots tape out of his elbows.
My son would be thrilled.
But just stuff like that. It's just really, there's like, they introduce these bizarre powers and you're like, that's weird and dumb. And then they do the coolest thing and you're like, I should start carrying tape with me because you can do anything. But yeah, it's really great. I don't have a whole lot else to say about it. Just try My Hero Academia. It's really good.
How many episodes are there?
So they just started the 4th season. So they're at about I think 60 episodes.
Oh, that's not bad.
As far as anime go,
That's short.
Pretty, yeah. I mean,
Manageable.
especially shonen anime, which tend to run for years and years.
And they'll have like
years.
30 to 60 episode seasons easily.
Yeah. And this one is also, as far as anime goes, not a lot of filler. It's the episodes are paced really well. It's written by a guy who loves Western media, and like there's a character who's named after Eraserhead, which is a David Lynch movie, and he's the coolest fucking character. Anyways, Justin, what did you have to recommend for us?
I just wanted to give an update on the newest season of Better Call Saul.
Oh, cool.
Okay, I can't remember if it's actually
Newest
the newest season, the
Netflix
newest Netflix
Oh, yes,
season.
season 4, I believe,
yeah,
right?
I think
Okay.
so. It's not as good as the other ones, in my
Okay.
opinion. I haven't. It's hard to talk about this without spoilers, but there was a major event that happened at the end of the last season where a main character was killed off, and since then, I feel like the story has lost a major driving force inside of it. There's not the same amount of conflict that there was in the first 3 seasons, and it just feels a little like they're treading water right now. Like, there's a lot of stuff that's happening with side characters that you're familiar with from Breaking Bad. It's kind of setting up some, like, you see some of the backstory of some of the less important characters from Breaking Bad, some of like the cartel characters and things, and that is interesting. But like Jimmy, the main character, Saul, his story I feel like is kind of slowed down a little bit, which is disappointing because that was the part that I really enjoyed. So yeah, we'll see where that goes. I don't know how many more episodes I have to finish before I finish the season, but yeah. So there's that. We've talked about this multiple times. I finally finished my second playthrough of Doom 2016.
Sweet.
Can't say enough good things about that game. I love it. What else is there? I haven't watched this yet, but season 2 of Altered Carbon just released on Netflix, and that, like, I wasn't super big on the first season. I enjoyed it enough where I want to see what they do with the second season. And they replaced the main character, which I know, Tyler, you couldn't stand him.
Yeah, I still haven't finished season 1.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about finishing it just because they've replaced him, and I'm like, maybe hopefully
It
this
is.
does it.
Season 2 is Anthony Mackie is
Right.
the new main character.
Season
so.
1, it's the new it's shitty RoboCop, right?
Yeah.
And then, sorry, but I do have to say about Altered Carbon in season 1, whenever it flashes back to, like, there's a part where it flashes back in time pretty significantly, and you see like a different group of characters playing, or actors playing the same characters. That stuff feels like a completely different show in a bad way. Like it feels like a Sci-Fi Channel original from the early 2000s.
That you're just gonna get more and more of that as you finish up the first season, because that's kind of where the first season go. Like, it just kind of takes all of that, and that's how it ends. So, but yeah, that being said, I enjoyed like some of the sci-fi ideas that were presented in it enough that I do want to see kind of what they're going to do with the second season. And I've heard that from like comments and stuff that I've read that books 2 and 3, I think people enjoyed more than book 1, which I think season 2 is supposedly taking stuff from books 2 and 3. So I don't know. We'll see. I'm going to watch that probably this week, next week, and
Cool.
I'll talk about it.
Yeah, I'm interested to hear about that. For
Yeah.
sure. Cool. Well, that wraps it up for us here at our very first episode of Rewatchers in the Ring. Soon to be so many more, I'm sure. But I'm pretty sure we've gone overtime and everyone's been disqualified. So we're going to have to get some new wrestlers in here next time who know how to manage their time better. But you've been here with me, Tyler. Next week, just a reminder, Michelle Oberg. It's kind of a funny story. Go check that out. Join us next week. But you've been here with me, Tyler Harris, and
Gwen Hammer.
Tyler McKinley.
Mitchell Marshall.
Josh Harris.
The smooth jazz hammer.
oh, he's still in the building.
I'm still here. Next week, I'm going to be bringing in my partner, the jagged rock sickle. We're going to be just comrades together in the ring, overthrowing capitalist scum.
Things about to get very geological.
I'm Justin Hammer.
Sorry, bye.